All right, so let's see, we're working on conversions today. So there's a lot of different ways you can do conversions. I'm going to teach you the way that I think best coincides with physics and will help you out later in the class. So you may have seen something like this to convert metric units. This is really useful for converting within metric. In physics, we use a lot of different units, so I'm going to try and teach you how to use conversion factors. Conversion factors are just a certain way you can use things such as 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. But before we get to that, if two things are equal, if you divide them by each other, it equals 1. This is a math principle that you need to understand for the background that'll really help you. So for example, 7 equals 7. We know that. So if I come here and I divide 7 divided by 7, the answer equals 1. All right, we're okay with that. So now let's move to letters or variables. If we have a equals a, if we divide a divided by a, this is also equal to 1. These are both anything that equals each other. So 7 equals 7, a equals a can be a conversion factor. But something that we're going to use is something like this from this chart. So we have 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. It tells us here. So if we're going to keep using our math logic that we did before, if I was to divide 2.54 centimeters divided by 1 inch, that should equal 1 as well. So this may trip some people up because you see some units in here and it still equals 1, but that's okay. You should also know if I was to flip this and do 1 inch divided by 2.54 centimeters, this also equals to 1. So this is what we call a conversion factor. Conversion factors are what we use to convert units, and the logic can be used to do very long problems for this and even advanced problems. So let's come down here. So multiplying a conversion factor does not change the value of a number, which is perfect. What we're doing is we're not changing a value. If I have 24 ounces and I want to convert units, I still want it to be the same amount of liquid. All I want is to get it to be different units. So what conversion factors allow us to do is don't change the value of something, but we can use these to turn it into the units that we want. Let's take a look over here. Understanding how conversion factors just change the units, not the value. So we're going to convert 24 inches into feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 24 inches. And what I'm going to do is I want to multiply this by a conversion factor. So a conversion factor we can use, we're going to come to our chart and we're going to say, all right, which one can get me from inches to feet? When I'm looking here, it looks like this is going to be the one that has to do with inches and feet and can get us there. So I'm going to use that conversion factor and I'm going to put it in a fraction. So now I'm going to put it as 1 foot divided by 12 inches. And so now if I was to multiply these, I would have 24 divided by 1. They're both on the top. And then that all is going to be divided by 12. Or I can just type this in my calculator and do 24 times parentheses 1 divided by 12 end parentheses. So here we would get 2 would be our number. And then now we need to know what the unit's going to be. So if I was to come here, I could do a little bit of what I like to call unit math and think, okay, inches is on top and there's an inches on bottom. Those are going to cancel. cross, cross. Feet is the only thing we have left, so that's the only unit we have left. So 24 inches is 2 feet. This concept of unit math is another big concept. So you need to know that one thing on the top cancels with one thing on the bottom, and whatever you're left over with is going to be your units. So this conversion factor could have also been written, I'll do it over here, 24 inches. Let's say I did 24 inches times 12 inches over 1 foot. I'm allowed to write the conversion factor either way. 1 foot on top, 12 inches on bottom, or 12 inches on top, 1 foot on bottom. Now, why did I pick this way rather than this way? Because if I come over here and I go to do my unit math at the end, I'm just looking at units here. I'm going to ignore the numbers. I would have inches times inches on top, which that doesn't cancel. That actually give me inches squared. And then all I have is feet on bottom. And that would give me inches squared over feet. That unit math doesn't check out. If it's confusing to you that this 24 is technically on top of the fraction, you can think of it as 24 over 1, but that may be a little confusing for some people. But just know if you just have a number alone, it counts as the top of the fraction. So that's why I chose to use the I still was going to use this conversion factor, but the question I was asking myself is, do I put the 12 inches on top or do I put the 12 inches on bottom? And because of the units, I put the 12 inches on bottom. All right, let's try another example. We're going to convert 3,000 millimeters into meters. So I'm going to start with my 3,000 millimeters. Now I'm asking myself, okay, I need to multiply it by a conversion factor. What conversion factor do I want to use from this chart? I'm thinking of something that could get me from millimeters to meters. So if I have anything in there that is just directly millimeters to meters, that's going to be the one I want to use. So if I come up here, it looks like this first one right here gives me millimeters to meters. So I know I'm going to either use, I'm going to use a different color here. Let's see. So the conversion factor I need to use is going to be this. So now my question is, do I want to use 1 meter over 1,000 millimeters or 1,000 millimeters over 1 meter? The question I need to use is, what do I want to multiply this 3,000 by? Well, if I look at this one, this is going to be a millimeters on top, and that's also going to be a millimeters on top. I'm not going to be able to get rid of the millimeters units then. So I'm going to want to go with this one. So if I come here, multiply this by 1 meter over 1,000 millimeters. First, I'll take care of the numbers. The way I take care of the numbers is you multiply across the top, and then you divide it by whatever is on bottom. You can also just type it into your calculator as 3,000 times parentheses 1 divided by 1,000 and parentheses. I prefer the multiplying across the top and then multiplying across the bottom. If you guys have taken chemistry, this is really like stoichiometry, and you may even see it in stoichiometry. Let me move it. You may even see it in stoichiometry and chemistry written like this. 3,000 millimeters, and then they may use fraction bars like this rather than writing it as a multiplication, and it might look like meters over 1,000 millimeters. And then you would see here, you would get millimeters cancel and left with meters. So here, if you like this from stoichiometry, you can use this fraction bar, or you can use this over here. So here, I'm going to do 3,000 times 1 is just 3,000 divided by 1,000 is going to give me 3. Now, what are my units? I have millimeters divided by, I have millimeters divided by millimeters. Those cancel, and I'm just left with meters. And that's my answer there. So now if you're getting the logic of conversion factors a little more, we can use this key up here to pretty much do any conversion we want. So here, we're going to do a few. Yeah, if you follow the conversion factor and units logic, you can do any multi-step conversion as well. And this is also going to work later when we try and convert more physics units and things like that. So we're going to go 20 kilometers, and we're going to try and get to inches. So what I'm thinking here is I need to get kilometers to inches. What link in this chain can get me all the way there? So I know, let's look at this one. I know kilometers can get me to miles. That will leave me with miles, and then miles can get me to feet, and that has me at feet, and then feet could get me to inches. So as long as there's that logic there, we'll be good. So here, now I just use my conversion factors. So I have 20 kilometers. I know I'm going to want to use this kilometers to mile first, because that's going to be my first step to get there. Now, which way do I want to put the fraction? I want to put the kilometers on bottom because I want them to cancel. So I'm going to have 1.61 kilometers and 1 mile right here. Rather than writing it with the fraction bar way, I'm going to write it as parentheses, like one big multiplication. So nice. So now if I was to think about it, kilometers over kilometers would cancel. I'm left with miles. So I still want to march to inches. So here, I'm going to use my next one, miles to feet. I'm going to put the miles on bottom because I want them to cancel. And I'm going to put 5,280 feet on top. Nice. So if I'm just going to keep track of my units as I'm going, I have kilometers over kilometers cancel, miles over miles cancel. I'm just in feet. So now I'm going to look at getting feet to inches. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to put 1 foot is 12 inches. Leave it with IN. All right. So now let's do another unit check. So here I've started in kilometers. I want to get to inches. I have kilometers on top here. You could think of this as like over 1 over here, but just know any numbers on the top of the fraction by its own. So I have kilometers divided by kilometers, which cancels. Miles divided by miles, which cancels. Feet divided by feet, which cancels. The only thing I have left is inches, which is perfect. That's what we want. So we're going to have inches is going to be our units. Now, how do you know what number to get? What I'm going to do is I'm going to just multiply across the whole top to get my numerator. So I'm going to pull out my calculator. 20 times 1 times 5,280 times 12. That's going to give me a big number over here. 1,267,200. And then if I go across the bottom, I have 1.61 times 1 times 1. I know multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value. So I'm going to have 1.61 on the bottom. And you could also type that into your calculator, 1.61. So now the units check out. We multiply the top, we multiplied the bottom. Now all we have to do is simplify this, which would be the number on top divided by 1.61. And that's going to give us 787,080. Let's give it 1 decimal place, 0.7 inches. So that's how many inches you would get in 20 kilometer. Makes sense. 20 kilometers is pretty far, so you're going to get a lot of inches. Let's do one more example. Okay, we're going to convert 4,000 millimeters into kilometers. So what I'm going to start with is the 4,000 millimeters, and I need to find a way where I can march from millimeters to kilometers. If there's something in here that's directly millimeters to kilometers, use that. But right here, I'm looking, let's see, I have, and there's, as long as you follow the logic of conversion factors and units, there's multiple ways you can get there. So right now I'm looking at, let's see, this millimeters will get me to meters. And then if I look down here, meters could get me to kilometers. So those two links could get me where I need to go. So I'm going to go through this one a little quicker. We have 4,000 millimeters. I'm going to multiply it by 1,000 millimeters for 1 meter. And then that will put me in meters. And then I can multiply this by 1,000 meters for 1 kilometer. And notice why I'm putting the fractions this way and not flipped is because I have the units in mind. So if I go to do a unit check real quick, I have millimeters over millimeters, those cancel. I have meters over meters, those cancel. I'm left with kilometers. Now what I'm doing is I'm multiplying across the top. 4,000 times 1 times 1 gives me 4,000. The bottom, 1,000 times 1,000, gives me 1,000,000. So then once I have the top and the bottom, I'm just going to divide these. So I have 4,000 divided by 1,000,000, and that's going to give me, from what my calculator says, 0.004 kilometers in 4,000 millimeters. And that's how we're going to do conversion.